as wasting a lot of it anyway and scaring the hell out of you, one way to respond is with a set of beliefs of Stoic fortitude. And the word is that was important for them and that they used to model their way of life on is not like for the Greeks excellence or for the hedonists happiness. For the Stoics, the word was apatheia. Now, I'm saying it in its Latinate form rather than in English, because if I say it in English, it's apathy, and you get the wrong idea. For the Stoics, apatheia was something you cultivated, unlike our society where they cultivate forests, but I mean, apathy was something you cultivated, and it didn't mean withdrawal, except in the sense of a courageous stance against, as it were, the buffeting powers of fate, over which you had no control, so the best one could do was to buck up and face a bad situation. Now, many of the Stoics, and I'm oversimplifying to get the arguments clear, certainly oversimplifying these two broad historical movements, but we've got to make the positions clear. Some of the Stoics thought, with the hedonists, that happiness would be the best thing, but they thought it was unattainable in this world. That's a very important belief structure given the next belief structure that will be historically dominant in Western civilization. That's a very important switch in belief, is that now happiness is still considered something that would be great if we could get it, but if you can't, the next best thing is to face up to it, buck up. An attitude with which I'm still familiar, as I say, from my background, sort of the Texas attitude toward a drought. Well, you can't be happy living out here, but damn it, they're not going to run me off this place. Well, that's kind of Stoic. There's nothing apathetic about it. I mean, the wind blew all the crops away. His farm's going, 80 miles down the road. Be happy about it would be crazy, but you can face it with some kind of courage, some kind of fortitude. So that was the Stoic ideal. So I say many of them believed happiness would be good, but was not possible. So their arguments for that are based on two things, one of which you may have already caught me on, and I hope you have, is that for the Stoics, the distinction between higher and lower pleasures is dubious, is questionable. Where do you really draw the line with that one? Why and why? I mean, are there any pleasures that don't have a downside? And for the Stoics, there aren't. There are none. Even, enjoying Beethoven's Fifth requires lots of work to get in a position to enjoy it. You don't just walk in and go, well, some people do who like to bluff. They go, ain't that great? It's like the first time they ever heard it. Oh, yeah, I love it. No, to really enjoy it and to get pleasure from it requires listening to a lot of things first. To really enjoy Moby Dick is more than just seeing the excellent movie by John Huston, written by Ray Bradbury. You have to actually read Moby Dick, and it's long, and there are sections in it about rendering whales, and that goes on about 200 pages, and you got to get through them. They're important to the story, and so that's work, and so for the Stoics, there's not this simple distinction between higher and lower pleasures. All pleasures have, as it were, a downside, all of them. And for people who try to lead a single-minded life of happiness or pleasure, who set that out as their goal, may fall victim to an old Eastern proverb from Eastern philosophy, and that's that chasing happiness is like chasing your own shadow. It's almost as if one could get still, one might be able to find it, but if you keep chasing it, it's always a little bit ahead. Well, the Stoics had some view like that about happiness. You chase it, it runs. So the Stoic answer was to lead this courageous life of, it sounds a little corny, but it's not any cornier than let's buck up and take it, guys. Sort of a male kind of thing, I have to admit. It's definitely, it's sexist, like most of this tradition. In any case, that was the view, and it's important to see when the two views were popular and in what ways. One view corresponded to a rising empire and its values. The other view was more prevalent during a falling or declining empire and with its values. So, in modern parlance, one might expect in a society on the ascendancy to have all kinds of optimistic values. In that regard, let me quickly refer you to the commercials that were made in the 1950s, especially those 1950s commercials that projected what life would be like in the year 1990. We're there now, and we look back at those commercials, and guess what? They missed it, right? It was wrong. They missed it. They missed it a long way. You can even look at the Jetsons and go, they even missed that. They missed it. The future didn't turn out to be like they imagined it. Very optimistic account of the future. In this current period, to try to again drive my analogy home about how ways of thinking and views of human conduct are rooted in real life problems, in real social and political problems, in our current period, in what form do we imagine our futures? One of the most striking examples to me here are the new movies that I call near-future movies. My favorite is Blade Runner. Now, Blade Runner, I don't know how many of you have seen it, is a magnificent film for this simple reason. It is post-apocalyptic, bored with the apocalypse. There's not going to be a nuclear war because the world's not that interesting. See, that's already sort of more cynical than many of us would want to be. The world's not interesting enough for us to enjoy the sting of a real death. Instead, we'll have this decline and smudge into the life where our lives and the lives of machines will become ever more blurred, as it is becoming. So in Blade Runner, we get just a near-future projection that shows us what Los Angeles would look like in 30 years if things just keep going on the way they do. You don't need any apocalypse to watch Blade Runner. You just need to say, well, it's going to get more polluted and more crowded and more people from more places are going to come there and they're going to make more money and it's going to look like that. And then you got Blade Runner. So those near futures help to say something about how we see our future as a culture as opposed, for example, to the culture of the 50s. Now, in my view, other cultural artifacts like the apocalypse movies were really ways to dodge the sticky and ugly task of facing a plausible near future. See, the easiest way to do this is to have a big apocalypse and start all over, and then you don't have to face all the nasty questions about what's really going to happen if things just grind on. So Blade Runner would be an example I'd use there to try to remind you that our culture, too, has different views that code different periods in its rise, decline, and so on. And it's not unusual. So in the Roman case as well, toward the declining period of Rome, Stoicism became a dominant view. Now, there's a very positive thing to say about Stoicism. It has a deeply democratic side to it, egalitarian side better, since the word democracy has become polluted through misuse and so on. What word hasn't, but it in particular. It has an egalitarian aspect to it. The two most famous of the Stoic philosophers, one was a king and one was a slave. Now, the beauty of that was as follows, that they were brothers in suffering. Both would have to put up with with what Shakespeare, Hamlet, calls the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. King's life's full of troubles. Shakespeare again says, the uneasy sets the crown upon the head. So the king needs to be a Stoic because, man, he's got troubles. And of course the slave does too. And this view has beneath it an egalitarian notion that we're alike in a couple of respects. We're all going to have troubles, and then there is that absolutely democratic institution that, as far as I know, hasn't been abolished yet, and it's death. The one absolutely democratic institution on the planet. Isn't that beautiful? In a way, rather than to be sort of existentialist about it, that sort of dress in black 60s attitude about it, death is a kind of utopian concept for me because even the rulers have to face it. I actually laugh, and some of you must too, when you see the poster, "He who dies with the most toys wins." You go, well, that's kind of a relief, In the end, Trump just has like 3 limousines at his funeral. Well, at the rate Trump's going, he may only have 1. But in any case, the point is that there is a democratic institution, widely respected by us and feared, even when we don't want to think or talk about it much. And beneath it, as I will argue later, there's a greater danger. Okay, talked about hedonism, and I've talked about Stoicism. The important connection I want to make is